Good evening and welcome to the October 11th, October 17th, 2022 meeting of the Danvers School Committee. We will begin as always with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. The Danvers Public Schools is a dynamic community of independent learners dedicated to respect, responsibility, creativity, and the pursuit of academic and personal excellence. The meeting is being broadcast on Danvers Community Access Television tonight. May I ask if anyone else in the audience is recording the proceedings? All right, hearing none. So let us just dive right into our agenda, and we have items of interest from the superintendent, school committee, and community. So we'll start with Mrs. Warmers.
Hi, the first item of interest tonight is from about a student group that we are creating along with the town, with town manager Steve Bartha and assistant town manager Jen Breaker, and Danvers Rec assistant director Nick Campion. We're putting together a student advisory from Danvers High School, and which would be made up of 9 members, 2 from each class, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior class, with 1 at-large member. This committee of students would be a committee that would be a liaison from the schools to the town, but also give input to town committees on projects that they were working on, and also have some projects of their own to be working with under the direction of Jen Breaker and Steve Bartha. So we're excited about the prospect of this. I was fortunate that Adam met with Jen and Nick Campion to really start planning this out, and we're working together on an application process and look forward to working with them on that.
Okay. So, question from the committee?
Yes, how will the students be selected? I guess per grade, you said 2 per grade. How will they be selected?
Right. There'll be an application process that we'll put out, and Adam will do that via his communication with students. And so we'll work on that. And then, right now we have a lot of liaisons to different committees. So we have two liaisons that work here with the school committee. There's liaisons also to the Human Rights and Inclusion committees. So some of those students could apply, but others as well could. And then we'll look through that application process with Jen Breaker and Nick and Steve Bartha.
Do you think that there is a desire from the students to contribute more to the community and the town? Like, are you hearing that in any kind of the feedback that you're getting? I see some head shaking over there.
Yeah, I'd say that we all definitely want to make our community a lot better and work to make the community more of like a community rather than like us all being separate. So yeah, we all want to help.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else? Robin? No. Okay. So I will. My only comment would be that I think communication is going to be extremely important for both the boards and the students to understand that what the advisory role really means, and so that there's no what's the word I'm looking for? Just clarity of communication in terms of what everybody's role will be and what the expectations are in terms of time but otherwise, hey, we always talk about engaging our young people more, and everyone's talked about the importance of civics and teaching students civics, and this would be an obvious way of getting young people involved in the town government. So.
More details to come. They'll be presenting it tomorrow night at the select board meeting. So I think some more comments will come out of that, and then we'll be working back together to put together the process.
Okay. Anything else from you, Madam Superintendent?
I do have one other thing, that the elementary level coming up, much to like what we did last year on the elementary community learning sessions that we did. We're also going to be doing that again this school year. So you'll have more information to come. There'll be one in November that we're going to try to do later in November, and kind of around our social emotional learning curriculum and culturally responsive read aloud. So we're going to try to do 3 of them across the year to go with the remaining 3 units that we are implementing with that. So Julie Pasternak and the elementary team will be putting out communications and give us more information on those workshops. We met with Jasmine Ramon last week, and we started that planning, and we look forward to working with her to put together those sessions. We're also bringing some maybe some outside organizations, community organizations, to be working with us as well.
Okay, great. Items of interest from the school committee. Does anyone have anything? Okay. I would like to, at the outset of the meeting, talk a little bit about the process by which we will find someone to replace some big shoes in Jeff Kay, who has, had to step down, having moved out of Danvers. And so we have now received, I believe, applications from 5 individuals. And so the plan right now is to do the interviews at our special meeting, which is next
October 24th.
October 24th.
Monday, October 24th.
Monday the 24th. We'll have a special meeting where we will interview the applicants. And we have had further discussion about whether we would vote that night or not, so that's sort of up in the air. I'm going to be looking into, at the request of the committee, whether interviews have to be public, et cetera. If there's any changes, we'll make those changes known publicly as soon as possible. But basically, the plan still is to have the interview sessions next Monday. And I'm sure that, at least I'm hopeful that of the 5 applicants, we will find the right person to join us. It's a big job, but I think it's a good thing to do for the town, and you really feel like you are doing something important and useful for the community of Danvers. So we'll get any new information out as quickly as possible on that. All right. Anything else from the committee? All right. So moving on to items of interest from the community. I see Mary Beth.
Good evening. I'm Mary Beth Berry, current president of DEEP, and I'm just here this evening to talk about the DEEP Wine and Food Tasting that will be taking place next Thursday, October 27th at the Danvers Port Yacht Club. This is the 22nd year DEEP has been doing the wine tasting. Funds from the wine tasting help us to support our teacher grant program. Every year we try to give somewhere between $15,000 to $20,000 back to the Danvers Public Schools, and it's through the fundraising of the wine tasting that allows us to do that. So just wanted to let folks know that. Information can be found on our website at supportdeep.org. Tickets can be purchased also at Merchants Liquor Mart, who is our main sponsor, and we have a number of other sponsors that are also contributing this year, and we thank them for that. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to information from the student representative. Oh, strike that. I'm sorry. Let me just take a look.
The superintendent.
I'm sorry. I jumped out of order. Information from about the student. We got that. Superintendent search update. Robin and Alice.
Yes, so we have Dorothy Presser, who is our Massachusetts Association of School Committee representative here, consultant, to share the findings of the focus groups and the survey. So, Ms. Presser, it's all yours.
Thank you, and thanking. Is this on?
Is that on?
Oh.
Want to jump in there, Adam?
Okay.
Sorry about that. And welcome.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me here this evening. So as you know, as part of the search process, often the way we start, or the way we really like to start, is to be able to do a survey and some focus groups in the community that will help inform the school committee about what the community is thinking about who they would like in the next leader. So we went through that process for the past several weeks. We had 484 responses to the online survey, which is really fantastic. We also had a total of 78 people who came to the various focus groups that we held. We held focus groups with the community, several parents groups, several focus groups with staff, and one with students. And it was great to have that also, particularly when we have online focus or online surveys. We tend to get less presence at focus groups, so 78 was really a nice number to see. So clearly, we got a lot of good information to feed to you that will help you as you continue on with the search. So we always ask, how are people feeling about the school district? And there were quite a number of positives that people brought out. They're a lot of confidence, a lot of strength, positive comments about the teaching staff, and from the teaching staff themselves feeling a sense of collegiality amongst each other. A couple parents commented, I've never had a teacher that I felt I didn't want my child to have all the way through their education. I felt like they had good teachers. So the parents and the staff also commented that there's longevity and stability among the staff members, which they felt contributed to the good education of the schools. There was also a lot of mention, particularly from the students, about the many opportunities that are available to the students in terms of extracurricular activities and classes. So they felt like the students particularly said that they felt that the student voice was valued. I was high school students that I was talking to, and they definitely felt that the student voice was valued within the school community. And there is also a good sense that the community supports the schools. People talked about, budgets for the schools, and they talked about the facilities being well maintained and appropriate for delivering the education to the students. There was, however, some sentiment that the academic standing of the district has slid from what it was, and that needs to be addressed. That there was a feeling that maybe years ago Danvers was more on the cutting edge and has kind of fallen behind, and they'd like to see that cutting edge return. A bit of a feeling that maybe students were leaving the district and because of the academic state of the schools, and they'd like to see that stop. There was a sort of a little bit of a dichotomy. People felt that social emotional learning was very important. People wanted to make sure that there was that support for the students in terms of social emotional learning, but were wondering if perhaps there was more of a balance to be sought in balancing academic and SEL. There was a lot of comments about school culture and the need to improve school culture and address some issues of equity, inclusion, and racism that they felt existed within the school. There was also a lot of talk about improving communication with the parents, with the community. There was several comments that people felt a communication was maybe more to check the box than having the meaning that they would like it to have. So they'd like to see an increase in good communication and sharing of information, and communication two ways, not just out, not just inform us, but listen to us. So with all that information, we sort of think about what kind of skills and attributes does the next leader need to have given where the district seems to be. And we ask people, and we also have some thoughts, about putting that together. So to me, the upshot was that the next leader really needs to be able to address school and district culture, and to be a communicator who's able to build back that culture. And also someone who has a strong background in curriculum and instruction and is able to address some of the academic issues that people addressed. And in terms of skills and background, people were wanting to make sure that the person had a good background in the classroom, that it wasn't someone who just sort of a year in the classroom and kind of shot through their way to the top, but had some good feeling of what is the life of a teacher like now? Do we understand? They'll be leading teachers, so do they really understand the job of the teachers? And also felt that either and that building, running a building, having run a building, and central office experience was important. Running a building and central office, or at least running a building, was an important background that the person should have. So we take this information and we suggest to you some qualifications that you look for in your advertising. We generally generally suggest that in your advertising, you delineate the qualifications that someone be licensed or eligible for licensure as a superintendent of schools in Massachusetts. Eligible often because you might get people from other states. They're eligible, but they don't quite have the license yet. A master's degree required with advanced degree preferred, and a minimum of 10 years in education, including teaching, central office, and administrative experience, and classroom teaching. Did I say teaching? Teaching, central office, and administrative experience. And then for criteria, that's sort of like kind of what everybody would sort of look for, right? So criteria for Danvers, excellent communicator who can build a culture of trust, a leadership and communication style that is dynamic, visible, accessible, and inclusive, a demonstrated ability to develop and lead a successful administrative team, demonstrated track record of valuing, promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in students, staff, and community, success in improving and maintaining high academic performance, and an understanding and recognition of good teaching. So we never like that list to get too long because nobody can be everything, right? So, so that's sort of a summation of the focus group and survey. I'll see if you have any questions before I go on.
Thank you.
Okay. So just a couple other things that I wanted to talk about this evening, or maybe Robin and Alice, who I've been working with, would like to take over. So you tell me.
Were you going to talk about the application?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Wormers, if we put I just linked to the agenda, the school committee application process.
For the screening committee.
For the screening committee,
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, sorry. Yeah, thank you.
Where did you put them?
It's under C2C, but now I'm changing the name to screening committee because I had a lapse. Okay, yeah.
So the next step, sort of the next step in the process, is we'll get busy working with Robin and Alice to put together the final advertising that will go out for the position. And while that is going on, the school committee will be looking for people to serve on the preliminary screening committee. The job of the preliminary screening committee is to look at all the applications that are received, make a decision of who, from those applications, who would they like to bring in for semifinalist interviews, and then determine from that information who they would like to send forward to the school committee as finalists for the position. We like to have, we always recommend to school committees that they have a good representation of stakeholders on that screening committee, at the same time not letting it get so big that it gets unwieldy. So what we had looked at was 2 school committee members, the president of the Danvers Teachers Association, 3 teachers, 1 from each level, 3 parents, 1 from each level, 1 member of the central office leadership team, 1 principal, 1 support staff member, and 1 member from the community at large. That would be someone from the community who is not also a parent. And those people would be the group that would come together to do that preliminary screening committee work. Part of the job of that screening committee is that interview process. And one of the things that we're very particular about in putting together that screening committee is making sure that nobody commits who can't also commit to the sets of dates that we put on the calendar for the screening committee. Because if you can't commit to those dates, or if people can't commit to those dates, then the process gets bogged down, and the whole search process will get bogged down, and you won't finish it when it is being completed. We ask people to commit to dates. We might not use all of them, but we want people to be available for those dates. and also people who, have a commitment to looking at the material and thinking about the criteria that have been set and making that match from, what they see in the materials to the criteria. This is, I believe, a copy of the letter.
Yes.
That will go out to the community outlining those requirements. The different groups will be mostly chosen by the groups, right? The teachers will decide who the teachers are. The central office people will decide who the central office people are, and so forth, except for the parents and community member, that the school committee would make a decision on who those members are. But that's a way to sort of make sure that there's that community inclusion in the process. And so I guess that letter will go out.
Yeah, I think probably tomorrow, Superintendent Wormer, you get that out and we'll get it to Jen Breaker too, and she can post it on the town website. So, yeah.
So from this point, obviously, if there's any questions, please ask. From this point, I would be working with Alice and Robin to finish the advertising materials. We'll get the advertising out there as soon as possible. If you're curious, the advertising it's posted on our website, the MASC website. It's posted on the superintendent's website. That's everyone who's looking for a job in Massachusetts kind of knows. The superintendent's job kind of knows those are the places to look. But in addition to that, we send that material to all our sister organizations in all the other states. We send it to universities that have schools of education. We have a list of people who ask to be notified of openings, and we send it to, particularly in this environment or in this day and age, we send it to Influence 100, which is a group of minority school administrators in Massachusetts that may be interested in superintendencies. So it gets quite widely distributed.
All right. So with questions, I think we'll start with, well, no, let me back up a little. Either Robin or Alice, do you have not questions, but things you want to comment on from what you've shown us tonight?
Yeah, just to clarify one thing, so regardless of which group you want to apply, you're applying for, everyone should submit their letters of interest to Ms. Campbell and I. And for instance, if central office, once we get everyone, we'll submit that to central office for them to choose whoever, based on whoever applied. So we should still be getting all the letters of interest. And I mean, I'll speak for myself. It's really been helpful working with the consultant. We would be lost without her. So it's been very helpful. So thank you. And we meet, for the community, we meet once a week on a consistent basis to check in.
And emails back.
And emails, constant emails every day usually.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo, the help that Dorothy has given Robin and I throughout this process. And speaking for both of us, we have sat with the feedback and have read every single line of feedback that has come through in the survey. And, it was eye-opening for me in a lot of cases. I think we have a lot of trust to rebuild from teachers. I think we've got a lot of opportunity. There was just a lot of optimism coming through, which gave me a lot of hope. But I do want to thank everyone who participated in the surveys. And I do want to also acknowledge, I think, the feedback we've been getting from Mary and Adam through that survey has been very positive. So to thank both of you as well for that. I want to make sure that acknowledgement coming through. And we did have students at the high school and fill it out too. So, unfortunately, we didn't get to all the elementary and middle school students, although there was a couple of responses for superintendents that like snow days. Well, that was my favorite comment. I,
Yes.
copied
Find
it
a
and pasted
superintendent who will call a lot of snow days.
Yeah, that was my favorite. I sent it to Robin. I'm like, oh my God. So I appreciated that specific comment. But yeah, that is all. But so far, I feel like the process we're meeting all of our timelines. Dorothy has been very much on us on when things are due and the conversations that we're having, and we're working very well, I think, towards a positive goal.
Mr. Lopes.
No, nothing. I see all the work, so I know a lot of good things are being done. So great job.
First of all, Dorothy, thanks for joining us. People know Dorothy from her long activity with the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, and we feel really honored to have you helping us through this process and keeping the process on track. Robin and Alice, I think, are doing a great job on their end, so I'm very optimistic. One question really for the both of you. So we have 4 appointments that come through the school committee, a community member and 3 parents. Usually the chair makes appointments to subcommittees. My thought was make recommendations to me, and I'll probably follow the recommendations. I would like to know, like, if you gave me a list of everybody who applied, and then who your 4 recommendations are, unless there's a good reason not to, I just rubber stamp it, but yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. I guess that's it. So
Okay.
thank you again. Thank you for all you're doing.
Thanks for
Appreciate
having
it.
me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See if I can get the computer back on here. All right. So we are now on to information from the student representative.
Hello. So this month at DHS, there was a student activity fair held during community blocks. Over 30 clubs and activities are available for students. Students had a chance to learn about all of these options. Some of the clubs have even held some of their meetings, such as Tomorrow's Teachers, PRISM, Issues to Action, and Women of the World. The DHS school newspaper, the DHS Onion, has already published 2 editions. And Students Against Destructive Decisions and Danvers Cares Youth Leaders has already planned a number of events for Red Ribbon Week and Kindness Week, which started today. And the DHS class officers have now been selected. And the DHS Acts, the theater group for DHS, is currently working on their current musical, Once on This Island, which is going very, very well. And you can come see it on November 17th through 19th.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions for our representative?
No, she brought me back to my time when I used to write for the Flying Onion. So,
Excellent. Thank you. Back on to information from the superintendent.
Yes.
Superintendent Wormers.
Thank you. Unfortunately, for the first 2 items of the agenda, we have people that were unable to make it to our meeting today. So we'll bring back Kim Bevan, that's our Human Resource Manager. We never were properly introduced her to you in August, so we will bring her back for a future meeting. And then Andy St. Pierre is he's sick tonight, unable to make it. So we will have his presentation in November, and his Mr. Federico has commented that it's going to be great because he can really wrap up the fall seasons and really tell us about how the kids are doing, and also give us like a little any kind of a tournament play that we might be seeing coming up. So good. Great. So we're going to move on to the October 1 enrollment report. Is that okay?
Sure, please.
Good. So I provided you with the October 1 enrollment report that was sent to DESE. We send it 3 times a year. This is the October enrollment. It's like our official enrollment that comes in. So you'll see that this year, I got my glasses on for the exact number, we have 3,347 students enrolled in the Danvers Public Schools. That is we're up 16 students over our past school year. We have increases in enrollment in 4 out of our 5 elementary schools. There has been a decline at the Great Oak School because we closed 1 kindergarten class at that school. Otherwise, there would have probably been more students at that school if we had had the 3 classes there. HRMS is holding steady with their enrollment of students. And then at Danvers High School, we had a decline of 27 students this past year. And again, I think we've talked about that in the past as we've had conversations around Essex Tech and the increased number of students that have been accepted to that school than in the past. So those are our numbers.
Questions? Dr. Dory.
I don't have any questions.
Any questions down there then?
No, I mean, I think we all are continuously concerned with the high school numbers declining. I mean, even if you look at grade 12 at 201 versus grade 9 at 179, you know, I think, as we had mentioned from Dorothy, like, we have these beautiful schools and these facilities, and, you know, we still just have a lot of work to do, I think, in improving the culture and the academics for the school, and making kids want to come and stay here within our district. So it doesn't fall on me just looking at the numbers in itself. It's telling to me. So I guess I have a question regarding, because I've heard from a couple of families just regarding classroom sizes. I know you just made a comment about Great Oak declining. Do we have concerns regarding, like, classroom sizes, and even just as we think about our budget for next year, and how those adjustments would need to be made based on declines in student enrollment?
Right now, like, looking at the classroom sizes, we're right in our range of
Okay.
about 20 to 22 students in a classroom. So I think we're in good shape right there.
Okay.
Would be looking at the incoming cohort of kindergarten students and seeing where that is.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Lopes.
I just have a question about, like, future populations within the town. Is that being considered? Like, is there even census data on, elementary age kids coming into the school, and how we can maybe have a future prediction on students that are incoming? Maybe you're not ready to answer that now, but I kind of want to put that out there, because the one major concern for me is when I look at the high school population of 781, if I'm not mistaken, it's built for 1,200 students. So there's quite a gap there, and I'm wondering, I mean, today, are we overstaffed? Are we staffed correctly for what's there now? And if there's a seismic shift, because things can change at any moment, how do we prepare for that and ensure that kids are getting the right education? I do like the ratio, though. You said 22 to 1. Is that across the board, or
That's the high end, yeah. The high
That's
end.
at the high end.
Yeah,
In the
at
high
low-
school, what does that
At the low
break
end is
down
about
to?
15. I
We're
think.
about 15.
15 to 1?
Yep.
Which is actually good, but the downside is we have a beautiful building here that we want to get.
Yeah, and I would say, like, 12, while we can hold 1,200, we don't want to hold 1,200.
Right.
I mean, I think, clearly we expected a smaller class this year. I don't think anybody, predicted we wouldn't have a smaller class. It's really, what I know from my decade here is that the biggest indicator is just we've kind of lost another 32 kids that select a vocational technical high school above the typical number. So that's where I think if you added 20 to 25 kids back in across 4 grades, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. I would also add, though, if you look at the numbers, K to 12, there's some fairly high fluctuation. You can look at grade 8 is at 286, whereas grade 6 is at 249. So right there is a 30 student swing as well. So the 10th and 9th grade were smaller classes anyways. So there is some, fluctuation there as well. But I think what it's done is it's allowed us to deploy staff, having smaller class sizes, better support kids that have unique learning needs. So we've certainly been very efficient, and I think very responsible with our staffing numbers for this year.
And one last question: is there an expectation to lose 100 students between grade 8 and grade 9 every year? Is that an average number, or is
That would be high.
That'd be high.
Yeah, it's usually, but it ranges between usually 8 to 9. It's ranged over the past 10 years. I would guess somewhere between 30 and 60 out of the 8th grade class. That's purely anecdotal. I'd have to go back and really check the numbers, but generally that's what I saw over the years.
And in regards to the 100 students who didn't matriculate to the high school, is there a sense of, Essex Tech took X, St. John's Prep took another?
A majority are I'd say select a vocational technical choice. We don't
60%, 70%?
we don't lose too many to parochial schools. I think when St. John's added their middle school, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that changed the trajectory of families that are selecting a parochial school. We see some that go out from the 8th grade, but not that many.
Okay, so of the 100, and I'm just looking at the numbers here, totally, anecdotally, like, how many did you lose to Essex Tech last year? Like, what percentage? Would 70, 80, or you can follow up
Of
with
the
that.
kids that went out,
Right.
I'd say a majority were vocational technical.
more than 50%?
Yes.
That's it. Thanks.
No problem.
I'm sorry, but it's not a public comment session. Thank you, though. So two questions. One on the class size. Generally speaking, in years past, I think that we've received this report, and it breaks down by school and by classroom. So if you could expand that and get that out to us so we can take a look, that will allow us to hone in a little bit more on particular places where there might be a bubble, just so that it's kind of on our radar, that's all. So we'd appreciate that.
That's at the elementary level.
Hmm?
At the elementary level is what you're.
Yes, yeah, you obviously can't do it at the middle or high school. It fluctuates depending on the subject and whatnot. But yeah, just at the elementary school. And the other thing is, again, I think it points out two things. One, we need to continue marketing all the good things that are going on at the high school, because we do. We want to keep as many students as we can and as it's appropriate for at DHS, because we think we offer a fine education here, and we think students should take advantage of it. We hope they will. And as a practical point too, it does require, and I know the town is continuing to look for ways to develop a relationship with the Voc Tech that fits Danvers into the other communities that go to the Voc Tech. Because the truth is, on any given year, and this has been talked about many times, especially during budget season, the fluctuation in the number of students or an increase in the number of students accepted can seriously impact the budget for the town. And so there is a subcommittee, and Dave and I are on that subcommittee. I think they're going to be planning a meeting soon to start talking about what our relationship can look like with the with Essex Tech. And so there'll be more to come on that. But in the meantime, let's keep telling the good story that Danvers High School has.
Chair, I have one question I thought of.
Sure.
Okay. So I know that we said elementary is roughly 20 to 22. Is there something to think about as time goes on? If we see that the numbers in the classrooms are larger at the elementary, I'm not saying cut teachers by any means, but shift, maybe you lose a teacher at the middle or high school level and put them down at the elementary level to make classes small. But not for this year, but I'm just saying in the future, if, and not forever, but if at times, just thinking long term. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think on the way the budgets are put together, it's always with a look at the actual numbers of students and the actual numbers of teachers that are needed for those students. And that's why you do see fluctuations. Every once in a while, you will see, you know, high school teachers move, say, to the middle school because that's where the need is in a given year. Or elementary school teachers might be asked to move to a different elementary school, depending on where the need is. So, yeah, they're very cognizant of that budget-wise. But, yes, always good to be thinking of that. All right. I'll go back to my agenda. All right, and strategic plan. Annual overview of MCAS.
Great. All right. So tonight I'm going to start out with like a district quick overview of the MCAS and kind of giving you highlights of what's happening at the state level as well as in Danvers. And then I'm fortunate to have Peter DeMauro from Danvers High, Ellen Fierick from the middle school, and Julie Pasternak at the elementary level to present the MCAS, the level-specific data. So I start, with our vision statement of the Danvers Public Schools, where we talk about the, that we are a community of learners that is respectful of individual differences, in which all students are valued for their unique strengths, talents, and challenges. That's a big part of our vision statement. That we look for student engagement and investment in their learning, and that we work hard to develop them into skilled communicators and problem solvers that are able to work with each other and be able to work together to solve real life, authentic problems in that work. So we really work on that. A lot of us worked on project-based learning and done that kind of work in the past. So to get down though to the MCAS. The state trends, were not, as if you've read in the media, that the trends were down in the MCAS for Massachusetts. So spring 22 was the first year that the MCAS grades 3 to 8 was back fully as a full battery of testing. The current 10th graders have not taken a full MCAS test since they went 7th grade. So the current 10th graders they're going to be tested this year have been a while since they've taken the full test. So DESE recommends that that we think about the spring 22 results as a new baseline. They're talking about, and when they presented the results to us as administrators, they kept thinking about like getting back to pre-pandemic levels. So what is the recovery from pandemic learning to get back to where we were in 2019? So we kind of looked at that as we were analyzing our data as well. The final thing that the state really harped in or focused on was the student absenteeism. Because of COVID, that would made a huge impact on learning, and some students were out for very extended periods of time because of being out with COVID, in addition to other things happening, other illnesses that they might have. So for a picture for you to understand that MCAS testing between 2019 to 2022 is that in 2019 was the last time that kids took the 3 through 8 MCAS as a full test. And then grade 10 also took it that year as well. In 2020, we were out in fully remote and not in school, so no tests were administered that year. In the spring of 2021, they only gave half testing, because remember it was that hybrid year when we were in that hybrid model, and they knew that they would not be, we were just all fully getting back to school, and to have take that much time out for assessing would not be productive for students. So they gave half a test, one session of the test, which makes it difficult to compare this year's results to the 21 results, but it was half that test. Grade 10, because they were working their way back to having that competency determination and having kids ready to graduate from high school, they gave a full test in grade 10 that year in 2021. So this year, this past spring of 22, was a full test in both 3 through 8 and 10. So now we're back to everyone testing again. So that's why the Department of Ed really wants us to think about this as the new baseline year, post-pandemic. So our trends was that we were right with the state. We trended with the state for most of our data, with a lot of it at or above the state average. The ELA achievement was down from 2021 and 19, with the exceptions of grade 8 and 10. We had better results in this than 2019. The math achievement was mixed from 2021, with results in 4, 6, 8, and 10 improving, and 3, 5, and 7 declining. So if you compare it, just to give you a quick overview, because the details are coming with the curriculum objectives in a minute, I kind of looked at it about like the state average, and then like if you were above the state average or below the state average. So we have a mix of grades that are above or below the state average or at it. But then I also pulled out at grade 4 and 5, I felt like the math results, they were like 12 points above the state average, which was great for our district. So I felt like they stand out on that. So we do have some challenges, the ones that are below the state average, but within that, the below the state average, there have been gains that have been made over past years of the MCAS. The other thing that, again, as I said to you, that the state was really focused on was absenteeism. So they found at the state level that in grades 3 to 8, the absenteeism increased 138% in 2022. And again, remember, you were in the hybrid year of that 2021 year, 2020 and 2021, and then we went full last year. So 18% of the students missed 18 days or more in 2021, that school year, that ended in that year, and then 28% missed 18 days or more in 2022. But again, remember, we went from a hybrid year to a year of full learning. So, but I thought the statistic that was astounding is across the state, there were 1.7 million days of missed school due to COVID positive cases. That was quite a bit. In Danvers, though, the picture's not as bleak, that our chronic absenteeism rate increased 71% between the 2 years. So 22% of our students missed 18 days or more in 2021-22 last year. And that's 708 students. In the year previous, when we were hybrid, it was only 12.9% students missing 18 days or more. So that was 427 students. And again, that was a hybrid year, so half the year, depending on what grade level you were at, for a good part of that year, there were a couple of days that you were home anyway, so that didn't count against if you were missing a day. So the average number of day absence was 12.5 days, which that's pretty high for last year. So we're hoping as we move forward, we start to see that number come down. We've this year we have a student support and attendance person that has been looking at that. She's been working with us as administrators, and we've been looking closely at a student attendance. So you're going to see, parents will start to see, like after 5 days, that we're going to send home a letter to say that we're noticing that your child has 5 days. This is early on. So if you have 5 days this early, it kind of sets you up towards meeting that 18 days being out, which would mean that chronic absenteeism, we want to try to keep that down. So again, a lot of communication with parents around, reasons for why, and if they were medically excused at that, we understand that completely, but we're really working at trying to get more kids back in school for a longer amount of time. And then finally, one other rating you're going to hear today that the curriculum directors will talk about is the accountability rating. So because of the different models of testing over the years, they really can't give a strict, they can't really hold us accountable right now because the testing methods haven't been consistent. So they are having a modified, what they call accountability rating, which we get, rates on like graduation and chronic absenteeism as well as school percentiles. And so they have a whole, if you can look here in these categories that they hold us accountable for. So that would be around achievement, student growth, high school completion at the high school level, our ELLs, their progress towards English proficiency, chronic absenteeism, and then for high school advanced coursework completion. So each school does have an accountability percentile as well. But there are no ratings to say whether you're underperforming or performing at the average. So I think at the middle and high school, they will talk about their accountability percentiles, so I wanted to give you some context for that. All right. So finally, I was just showing you the grades. We do, as a district, get a composite score for how our students are doing on the MCAS. So you'll see the right furthest columns are our 2022, whether we're meeting or exceeding expectations. So you can see we are at the state average in each of the areas when we're combining grades 3 through 8. So as the curriculum directors come up, they will give you more of show you the different rates of at or above proficiency at their levels. The other piece of data I wanted to share with you is our average scale scores. And the reason I put this up, and I'm not going to go through each one of them, is that this is the score parents see on their score report. They see what their child is on the scale, what their average scale score was, and you'll also get the graph where you'll see your student and then how what the district averages and then what the state averages. So it's just, I wanted to show you how we look at this and compare ourselves to the state. And you can see again here, the pattern is that we are, at the state average with these scores. So that is my broad brush overview, and as the year goes on, we'll be incorporating in when we do some kind of achievement presentations to you. We can incorporate more detailed data. But at this point, I'm going to ask Peter Demaro to come up and talk about Danvers High and how they did on the MCAS this year.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'll start by going over the more specific, detailed Danvers High School data, and then invite Ellen and Julie up afterwards, and then we can all come back up at the end to answer and clarify any questions you may have. So over the past few years, since pre-pandemic, we've really been able to lean on and reference the acceleration roadmap that DESE published in spring 2021, where the priorities are around a sense of belonging and access to grade level work, along with student monitoring through formative assessments over that time. And all of those three priorities have really met the focus of our professional development. And through looking at our data compared to 2019, there are actually quite a few highlights that I hope to present in a little bit. So first, here is an overview of our scores in relation to the state data. As Mary said, the Danvers High MCAS data trended right along with the state across the board. In all cases, we were either right alongside the state in terms of the total students meeting or exceeding expectations or slightly above. And the same was true for the average scaled score for ELA and math. So you can see for ELA in 2021, we were slightly above the state. 2022, slightly above the state. For math, we actually were quite below the state, but as of this year's results, we had growth right along the state in terms of their average. And then for science, once again, both cases were slightly above the state. And as you can see, the average scaled scores below, the same case at the bottom right there. So I can shift into some highlights. As I said, we had quite a few highlights digging into the specific data. In reference to the accountability percentage that Mary referenced with those indicators, our accountability percentage increased from the 47th percentile to the 53rd percentile due to improvements in those different areas. We also saw an increase in ELA achievement from 60% in 2019 to 62% in terms of students meeting or exceeding those expectations. There were also improvements in subgroup composite scaled scores, which was really impressive. So in ELA, our high needs, special education, and low income subgroups all increased their average composite scores. And in math, our high needs and low income subgroups both increased their average composite scores as well. Digging more specifically into the item analysis, where you can look into the specific questions and standards, our ELA item analysis drastically improved from 2019 to this year's. Looking at 2019's item analysis, there are 17 questions where students answered either at or below the state in terms of the percentage for students that answered correctly. And then looking at this past year's 2022 MCAS, there were only 2 questions where the students answered below or at the state percentage, where all the rest are above. So I thought that was a huge improvement from last time. And then in terms of achievement in math and science as well, as summarized by the last slide, overall we were either at or above the state in terms of overall students meeting or exceeding expectations. And then for areas of growth, our areas of growth were mostly focused around math growth and achievement. There was a dip in the overall math average composite scaled scores looking from 2019 to 2022. And then looking at the math item analysis, we sort of are just staying in the same range. In 2019, we were 25 items at or below the state, and then last year we were 28 items, so right in the same range. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was our new implementation at the 9th grade level for our Algebra 1 class. We are implementing a new curriculum through Carnegie Learning, and we're able to actually, for the past 2 years, through a math acceleration grant through DESE, we've been able to get funds to support the implementation of that high quality curriculum. So at the high school level, we actually adopted Carnegie for Algebra 2 and did not have it for Algebra 1 and Geometry. And then actually, through a separate process, the middle school ended up adopting it as well, leaving both Algebra and Geometry, the last 2 that did not use that curriculum. So over the next couple of years, we sort of have a staggered implementation, just to not overwhelm students and teachers. So this was our first year that we're implementing at the Algebra 1 level, and then our plan is to then implement it at the Geometry level next year. So there's a consistent and coherent curriculum experience in terms of the high quality math curriculum. As with any new initiative or curriculum, it takes time for implementation, and we have scheduled PD to work with them to support our teachers and students as it's coming on. And I think that's it. So I'm going to hand it over to Ellen for HRMS.
Thank you, Peter. Good evening. There are many reasons for optimism in looking at the middle school MCAS data. So starting with grade 6 in English language arts and mathematics, as you can see, clearly we're at the state level for the percentage of students who are meeting or exceeding expectations in English language arts. And while we are below in mathematics, as you can see, that gap between the school and the state level between 2019 and 2022 has decreased. So in 2019 in ELA, there was a 6% point gap between the school and the state in terms of percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations, whereas we were at the state level this year. Similarly, in grade 6 mathematics, we had a 13 percentage point difference in 2019, and that's down to 5% percentage points difference. So that's I think, a really encouraging sign, especially about the new mathematics curriculum. I don't know that we can necessarily attribute it to that, but it's certainly interesting data after 1 year of implementation. In grade 7, the data is a little bit different. So we went from, in 2019, being at the state level in terms of percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations to now being just a bit below at 3 percentage point differential. And then where we were 9 percentage points below the state in 2019, we're now 10%. However, if you look at that cohort of students, so last year's 7th grade students, as 6th graders, their composite scaled score for mathematics was 486.8 was their composite scaled score, and yet as 7th graders, it was 489. So if you look at the actual cohort of students, their performance improved from 6th grade to 7th grade in terms of looking at their actual score on the test itself. Looking at our 8th grade, kind of similar trend to the 6th grade, where our percentage of students at or meeting or exceeding expectations, that gap between where we were in the state, again, closed from 9 percentage points below to 5 in ELA, and then mathematics, it went from 12 percentage points below to 9. In terms of percentage of students meeting or exceeding. And then we're very pleased with our science results, where we are at 49% of our students meeting or exceeding expectations, up from being below the state percentage in 2019. As far as some highlights and some things that we are really pleased about is our accountability percentile that Mary spoke about. Went from the 19th percentile in 2019 when at this meeting in 2019, Adam and I were up here talking about what our being in need of assistance and all the steps that we had to go through with the Department of Education, to now being up to 31st percentile. So we're very pleased with that accountability rating. Again, our science achievement is a highlight for sure in terms of having 49% of students having met or exceeded expectations. In grade 6 math, that increase from 23% of students having met or exceeded expectations in 2021. In 2019, that was at 38%. So now we're at 36. We're closing into our pre-pandemic levels in 6th grade mathematics. And then in grade 8, all 3 subjects improved the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations over 2021. Another highlight is our special education subgroup, or students with disabilities group, their composite scaled scores. So this is across all 3 grade levels. Mathematics in 2019, their composite scaled score for students with disabilities was 474.4. In 2022, that's up to 474.8. Certainly, you know, a small gain, but really anything, I feel like anything above or resembling pre-pandemic levels is something to be optimistic about. In science, students with disabilities composite scaled score was 475.8 in 2019, and now that is up to 484.3. Some growth areas that we are certainly working on is across the board in English language arts, the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations has not yet returned to our 2019 levels. That's certainly something that we're thinking about, that I've had conversations with the department. We're certainly wondering about students' stamina for both reading and writing, and what we need to do to prepare students for that type of really intensive reading and on-demand writing that the test asks of them. It's very hard to replicate in the classroom setting because they have unlimited time for reading and writing on the test, which we just simply can't replicate in the classroom. So that's something we're spending some time thinking about. In grade 7 mathematics, our percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations has not yet returned to 2019 levels. And as Peter said, we are also implementing the Carnegie Learning math curriculum. This year's our first year implementing in algebra for 8th grade students who take algebra, and it's year 2 in our other courses. And again, through that mathematics acceleration grant, through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, we've been fortunate enough to receive quite a bit of implementation support from Carnegie Learning staff developers, and that's going very well. And now I'll turn it over to Julie to talk about our elementary results. Hello. So at the elementary level, you can see I'm presenting an average score across the 5 schools and comparing our district scores to the state. And I have 2 slides. The first is on ELA. And you can see that we, at all 3 grade levels, are above the state level. So that is listed under our highlights. But really what I wanted to talk to you about today is that this is just one assessment, and this tells us, myself and all of us working together, that that we're not meeting our end of grade level expectations. Yes, we're above the state, but that does not mean that we're meeting our end of 3rd grade expectations, our end of 4th grade, our end of 5th grade expectations. What this doesn't tell is how you get there. And so that's what we've really been focused on at the elementary level, is using our universal screeners. We've implemented new assessments this year. And it wasn't that long ago that I was standing up here and one of you asked me, well, what's going to happen to that percentage when you implement new reading assessments in the fall? And I said, I don't know. I do know now. So I think the message that I've given to teachers and hopefully families at open house is that there's no point in giving an assessment where everything looks great. That does not help you. That does not help me as a teacher know what I need to do next with my students. So we have implemented DIBELS, a universal screener, K to 5. It'll be implemented 3 times a year. But even that doesn't tell me exactly what I need to do with my students. I then need to look at who are my kids who are at risk. The screener tells me who's at risk. Now I need to take those names and I need to do diagnostic assessment. I need to dig deeper to figure out where my instruction needs to begin with those students. And that's the work that's happening at the elementary schools right now. And I can tell you, I have been in 3rd grade classrooms where teachers are teaching orthographic mapping in small groups. People are upending their instruction based on the DIBELS results from the fall. And so what I want to, yes, the DIBELS results are lower than where we left with running records in last spring. But I really think that it's much more empowering information to have at our fingertips to know exactly what kids need for reading, where are we falling down, and it's really down to the individual kid level. And yes, the MCAS scores tell me, okay, that's a 3rd type of data. That's looking at how are we doing at grade level expectations. And you can say, look, it's green, we're above the state. Okay, but we're still at 42, 47, 45. We have work to do, but what tells us what that work is our assessments and implementing DIBELS. And there are 3rd and 4th grade teachers giving quick phonics screeners, giving phonemic awareness screeners. These are things we've never done, especially in the upper grades. And having that, the other part to this is that you can see is we have a lot of learning and professional development to do, because myself as a former 4th grade teacher, if you said, oh, you need to teach R controlled vowels, I'd be like, I don't know how to do that. So these are all things that we've really focused on in the last month and a half, is our learning as elementary teachers and completely upending our reading instruction. And making sure that we're using those assessments, not necessarily the MCAS assessments, but our universal screener, our diagnostic screeners, to figure out what every single kid needs. At the beginning of the year data meetings that I sat in a couple, teachers left knowing exactly what every student needs, what's their first goal, when are we meeting again in 6 weeks to assess where we are,
give the progress monitoring. Is our instruction working? Is our intervention working? And then we go again and make another plan and keep going. So yes, this is about MCAS, but for me, MCAS just tells us we're not there, but it doesn't tell me how we're going to get there. And so I think shifting our assessments actually changed our instruction more in the last month than I even could have imagined a year ago. Okay, that's ELA. Go on to math. That's fine. Okay. So math, the highlights are 4th and 5th grade math are both 12 percentage points above the state, which is very significant. So I'm very, that's good. Okay, so then I remember Alice saying last spring, okay, but what about math? You're doing all this work around reading, but what about math? So we are actually using our district-wide MTSS meetings to focus on math at the elementary level. Focus on what is the pre-assessment for the unit telling us? What are the formative assessments telling us? And those are conversations that they have one teacher from each grade level at each school. So you're envisioning 5 4th grade teachers, 1 from each school, sitting around a table. Unit 2's coming up. What are our expectations for Unit 2? What are our formative assessments? When we meet again in a month, what data are we looking at? And then that really strengthens the content knowledge and those conversations across schools, which then when they go back to their schools, they're having with their teams, at their building level. So I guess my takeaway point from math, as it is from ELA, yes, we're above the state, but we have work to do, but we are fully engaged in that work. And that work is really happening at the student level. And what do these kids specifically need? What gaps are there that need to be taught either as a whole class or small groups? And how are we making sure we meet those needs while simultaneously teaching the grade level content? So there's a lot of things happening where we're teaching, say, a 5th grade expectation, but we're also simultaneously teaching small group instruction at a 3rd or 4th grade level. So we don't want to miss out, like Peter referenced at the beginning, the acceleration roadmap from the state. We need to be teaching grade level content as well as what the assessments are showing us students need. So if they don't get the grade level content, then they're never going to get it. So they need both simultaneously. So teachers are on board. We're moving. I guess that's the takeaway. Thank you.
That's it. That's our
Yeah.
presentation. That's our big, like our global.
Dr. Doherty, I'm going to you first. 'Cause, I
Okay,
know you love MCAS and
Well,
other things like that.
Ms. Pasternak, I was just very impressed, and I loved your enthusiasm about what you're taking away from the MCAS. And I think it's just important for everyone to realize, and you kind of touched on this, like, you know, the MCAS represents one single moment of data added in one time. So even if we didn't come out of the pandemic, it's still one moment where every teacher is seeing the formative and summative assessments multiple times on a daily basis. So I hope that the teachers as a whole are feeling proud, and this is like K through 12, of what they've accomplished, because it's been a tough 2 years and we've made some huge gains. And I love too that you talked about running records, because like we're gonna have a new baseline for that. Like that's thrown out, those aren't accurate anymore. So like we might not get to where we want, but we know where we need to go. And I've even seen the shift at the elementary level in the last year to this year with like the more structured literacy piece. And I think as time goes on, that's gonna be, we'll see more of the change at the middle school level and the high school, but it's gonna take a few years, and that's fine. One question I just had, because I don't think we talked about special ed students, but as far as like the race demographics, where are we with that? As far as that subgroup?
Yes, we're still working. We're
Okay.
doing that. So today's presentation is more of a global one, and then we are going
Okay.
to take and then we'll come back and present disaggregated data to you.
Okay, awesome, thank you. How did just in general, and this is for all the curriculum directors, how do the teachers feel? I mean, I'm sure, just curious, because they probably got some information. You don't have to share if you don't want to, but I'm always curious to see like the feedback. I mean, because there are wins here.
Yeah, I think it's hard when you're the individual teacher. You take it
personally.
Okay.
And I think that the hopefully we've done a better job of sort of, okay, that is information for us to use, but we need to focus on the kids in front of us and what do they need right now. And that, yes, this data does influence looking at things district-wide, where potential, subgroup issues, where there's different things that can pop up, but hopefully the message, each building has had sort of its own meeting with groups of teachers, and hopefully I can speak, I went to the Smith meeting, and the overall message was, look, we're above the state, and this is moving forward, though. We have more work to do, and that's what our local data is showing us, that we have work to do. And I think what I've seen in classrooms is teachers are excited to be leaving the data meetings knowing exactly what students need. Our reading teachers have done an amazing job putting together those resources, so that we know what the phonemic awareness group needs, what the fluency group, and I, as a fourth grade teacher, have a list of resources that I can use with those small groups. So we wouldn't be able to pull any of this off without the reading teachers sort of chugging behind the scenes, making this all supported, giving the resources to the teachers so that they can then utilize them with their students.
No, that makes sense. And I think, we talked earlier, this is the new baseline. So maybe we weren't where we wanted to be, or maybe we weren't where we were, we know, like in 2017, 2018, but it's a new baseline. So this is where we are. We know where we want to go. I'm sure there's conversations happening where we want to be next year, and that's so this is where our starting point. So that's it.
Ready? Do we have a number of students that did not complete the MCAS? So like their scores are 0, and do those zeros count towards this?
Yes. Yes. So students were sick, sick or opted not to take the MCAS. They're counted as zeros in our scores. So
did we see an increase in those in 2020? 2022. What year are we?
Yes, we're in 2022. Yeah, we took it 22, spring of 22. I don't think that we got any difference in what we had. I felt like we had around the same number of students that opted not to take the MCAS as we have in the past.
I know, anecdotally, it feels like we had more students who did not take the test in 2021 than 2022, but it was still a fairly significant number in 2022. Certainly much higher than we ever had 2019 or prior. Are we
ever allowed to see that number without those zeros?
We could calculate, because it's a spreadsheet, so we could calculate it out. We could
calculate
it out if you wanted us to.
I'm just curious to kind of dig deeper into, because I had heard a lot of opt-outs as well, and I was just curious on how that affects the scores.
So the state doesn't give us that information. You'd have to.
You have to run it. Yeah, we could run it on the spreadsheet.
I mean, for example, I think at the top of my head, I think 8th grade science had a 94% participation rate, and that's the last test that students take. So sometimes they might even sit for the English test, and then more opt out by math, and then by science, even more have opted out. And so so I think to have the results that we had in science with 6% of students essentially taking zeros on the test is pretty impressive as well.
We actually got, on the accountability, we were at 94%. 95 is like meeting the accountability target. We were at 94% participation rate in 3 schools in one subject of science area. So 2 elementaries and 1 at the middle school. So.
And the parents today, I think, receive, or will, I guess, over the next couple of days, are receiving the individual, because I got it today. And parents are welcome to have conversations, I'm assuming, with teachers. So if they do have specific questions or concerns, they can have conversations with teachers, principals, and whomever, right, to talk about their individual students' findings. I guess, it's all about, like, I get the whole new baseline thing, but I'm just not in that right mindset right now, because I keep thinking about, why can't we go back? Why can't we think of this as like recovery, right? Getting us to where we were, instead of thinking of this as, it's the feedback we got from the superintendent survey in terms of academic excellence and returning back to that. So that is just sitting in the back of my head. I don't want to sit here thinking like, oh, this is a new baseline and it's lower. I am really concerned with the middle school numbers. I guess I didn't sit with them close enough until I just saw this now. So I think it would be really interesting just to dive deeper into those middle school numbers, because some of those are very concerning. In terms of where like the math in 8th grade, I think is, the state is low and then we're below that, right? So I think that's something for us to think about as well. And, as we talk through, Julie, you keep talking about like the breakouts, and I think parents are still looking for children to be challenged, right? So I hear you, and I know it's important to teach to what those kids need, but we can't forget about those kids that need that challenge and that further, push in those classrooms. So these are, again, this is the first time I'm seeing all this. I know we're going to continue to talk about it over the next month or so. So I'd like to just kind of sit further with it.
I don't think I'm going to ask questions. I think I'll just make a couple statements. And I think I'll start with the elementary school. But first and foremost, I'll say, like, all of this information is fantastic. And I think seeing the averages and the way they compare, I think I just would want a more micro view of what's happening with the numbers, because when we think about our role on the committee, it's about what do the teachers need? What do the individual schools need, to improve performance and improve scores. So this isn't any judgment on the teachers or the students, but I'd rather see more granular data around where the big challenges are, because that informs us of where we need money, we need resources, and where we need things to go. So that's just an overarching statement on that. And then I'm going to start backwards with elementary. So thanks for the presentation, but in the future, I would love to see how that breaks out by each school. Seeing the elementary information just averaged out, because I've heard from parents who feel that Smith has more resources for this, or Otis has, Thorpe and all the other schools have, different resources and capabilities and facilities, and just wondering if that has some kind of impact on what's happening on the scores. So
and breaking it down by student population,
right, and by population, et cetera, just so we can see where the challenges are and we can try to mitigate it, address it, et cetera. Middle school, not going to repeat what Alice said. I think I agree, but we are coming out of a pandemic. But in a little while, I'm going to give an update on the Essex Tech feedback from Mike Landers. And the middle school is just an area that we really have to shine a bright light on, because that's the place where we're going to lose students. That's where parents are going to say, this is not working. I'm getting my kids out of the Danvers public school system. So that's something that we absolutely have to shine a light on and figure out, what can we do to help increase that. And then, and that's it. And pretty much that's it. Like, I love seeing the data. Last point, do we always compare district to state? I would love to see a peer analysis around like communities, budget, and demographics to really see how we compare, on a dollar for dollar basis. Show me a town that spends around the same money as Danvers. How do we compare to those towns? I'm really curious to see that. I'd love to see that one day. Thank you.
The state just came out with something like
Oh, I'd love that.
but only they have access to it.
Thank you all. I agree with what everybody has said so far. I always struggle with the idea of what is the real purpose of MCAS and what's its best use for us. And it seems to me that the best use is diagnostic. I don't know that you can start making overall district conclusions or even school conclusions based solely on MCAS scores. And I don't ever want to see us become a district that one assessment is the only thing that drives us. But at the same time, it is a useful tool, given that every student at every grade level is sort of, okay, they take the test and you can get a sense of how you compare, and more importantly, where we need to go. So I think it's valuable, but I don't want to draw too many conclusions from, hey, okay, this is, we're this district, we're that district. I don't know that we should only compare ourselves to the state. I do think that we should probably compare ourselves to ourselves in a year-over-year basis and always be looking to move that bar forward. How much should it move a year? Again, I don't know. It's almost like for those of you who play golf, you know, if you started out, if you could like sort of knock off 2 strokes around for 4 years, you might go from shooting 90 to 82, which is a big difference if you play golf. So I don't know that it has to be a big jump every year, but continued forward progress against ourselves is going to lead to continued progress against whatever number we want to compare to, states, other schools, the whole thing. It's a valuable diagnostic, and I like the approach of really nailing down, okay, it's this group of students, and here's what they need, and here's how we can provide it. And so I keep doing what you're doing, keep trying to move that ball forward because it does matter. And if the committees have a mind to, I think it would be worth having a workshop type meeting where all we'll talk about is MCAS for an hour or so, and maybe dig into the numbers deeper. And maybe that's even after the first of the year when this team has had more time to dig deeply into what the numbers are, if that makes sense to everybody. So if you're all willing, I think that'd be a good idea. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the work you're doing. If nothing else, we have an enthusiastic group of curriculum people. So, but that's a good sign. It means we're going to move that ball. I have faith that you'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to the team.
With me. All right, so we are down to new business, right? No, I'm sorry.
We don't have any.
Unfinished business. Is anyone volunteering as a delegate for the business meeting for the Mass Association of School Committees? It is tough because it starts on a Wednesday. There are some great workshops down there, but it is a big commitment of time, and if you're gainfully employed like most of us are, it's difficult to take that time. So.
Is there any virtual options? Because I had mentioned work is going to prevent me from.
Any virtual options?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. That might be something to suggest to Dorothy. Because it is. I mean, can you imagine, people who are in the western part of the state? That is a long trek down to the Cape where it's held every year. It's not like they rotate it around. And it is a commitment for all of us who are probably busier in our work life than we've ever been before. So it's a challenge. Maybe this is a year where we'll just have to take a report from the superintendent and you'll let us know what happens. So, all right, thank you.
The voting's the 5th, right? So you technically didn't have to go to the whole thing.
That is true. The voting is the 5th.
It's still going to the Cape.
There are 6 resolutions. I read through the resolutions. I don't know that any of them are particularly controversial. I would imagine they'll all pass. So again, maybe this is a year we simply can't go.
No, you could just go on the 5th and vote, but you have to go to the Cape. It's in the morning, right? Like 9 a.m. or something voting is?
I think the voting's a little later than that, but it's like a regular business meeting day. So I think the voting's in the early afternoon.
I can look into potentially a Saturday.
Did you just volunteer?
He said
I didn't
potential.
volunteer, I said investigate.
Okay. Okay.
What about, we might have the new school committee member might want to do
You
that.
could make that a requirement.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, yeah, backtrack.
That might be a good idea.
I'm kidding. I was kidding. No. Okay.
All right, thank you. We'll table that again. Let's see. New business, we have none. The consent agenda, I'll accept a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Are there any questions about any items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Minutes, Madam Secretary.
The secretary moves to approve and release the minutes from the September 12th, 2022 regular meeting.
Did you make a motion or just a recommendation?
Moves. I said the
You
moves
moved.
to
Okay, do
approve.
we have
Yep.
a second?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there a discussion? Hearing none, all those, please say aye.
Aye.
Communications, Mrs. Wormers.
We just have a next board meeting coming
Okay.
up this Wednesday. Other than that, we don't have any other communications.
Okay. Legislation, let's face it, we are 3 weeks out from an election, so, and the legislature is not in session. You can bet everybody is working on their campaigns, and all I will say is vote. The voting will be here at the high school, as always, first Tuesday in November, and vote, vote, vote. Well, vote only once, but vote enthusiastically. Yeah. All right, subcommittee and yearly agenda items. Essex Tech, Gabe?
Yeah, little update from Mike Landers, who's the Danvers representative on Essex Tech, and I kind of alluded to this when we were talking about the middle school and kind of speaking directly around the high school population, which isn't so much an indictment on the high school environment. It's more about all the efforts that Essex Tech is putting into their expansion. We're looking at it's not so much a tech school as more of a charter school, and one thing that we all have to take into consideration as a community, as a school, as a town in regards to our budgets, they are loudly and proudly pushing forward in expansion territory. I mean, they expect to be double the size of their current enrollment. So we're looking at a potential school up the road, which we, in essence, can consider a charter school at over 2,000 students. Their goal is to use every acre in every classroom to its fullest capacity to deliver a quality education and tech program available. It's really about the town and the school committees having, internally strong conversations about our middle school and high school engagement around, budgets and things that we can do to really amplify and differentiate what's happening within the Danvers public schools, especially the high school. And I've said this multiple times before, is that we really have to amplify the good things that are happening and call out those differentiations. So they're not going anywhere. Another big item is that in regards to out-of-district students that are going to Essex Tech, they've moved to a lottery system. This is something that they said was not possible before because it was proposed by the town of Danvers, but they're doing it for out-of-district students. Within the in-district schools, they will maintain a point system with recommendations. So again, I share this. This is all public information that's coming from Mike Landers that sits on the board. These are my comments based on my conversation and the feedback that he's provided me. And that's pretty much it. I mean, it's just really about differentiation and amplification. I don't think it's a situation of one's bad and one's good. It's really a conversation of what are the differences and what can we offer, and also how can we really engage those 8th grade students, those middle schoolers, in that transition. And that's why I called it like those middle school scores and some of the challenges there, and what do we need to do to make parents and students really feel good about Danvers Public Schools.
If I can ask you, so just so I heard you right, they're talking about doubling their current size at some point?
Yeah, I believe they're over.
Do they have a
little over-
timeline? Like
little over 1,000 students. I didn't get the timeline on it, but the
like
goal is
They're like 1,700.
yeah. All right, so not double. Add another 1,000, roughly 2,400 to 2,500 students. I didn't get the timeline on that, but basically the goal is to use every single acre available. They're going to continue to expand programs.
It's interesting. I only ask this because at the back in finance committee season, when the superintendent of the VOTEC, I keep going VOTEC, the technical school, presented to the selectmen, one of the concerns that was expressed in the finance committee has to do with growth, and what they were told was that we're pretty much maxed out. There's no plans for expanding very much in the next year. So to hear that really long term there really are plans to expand.
Well, they're building. They're getting $1 million grants. I mean, we're competing with an unlimited budget behemoth And again, we just have to talk about differentiation. We can't
Yeah.
compete with what they do,
Right, exactly.
but we really have to start differentiating and highlighting, you know, the academics, some of the sports programs, band,
Yeah.
you know, other opportunities within the school.
They,
Completely different marketing program.
yeah, I mean, and I guess I look at it sort of this way. I'll just comment a little, I'm not going to go on long, but the comments that we had from Alice and from your survey on the
Oh, yeah.
superintendent search, some of the comments were we want lower class sizes and we should be paying paraprofessionals more here, et cetera, et cetera. All good points, but the more that the budget is uncertain every year in terms of what we have to work with, the harder it is to do those things that the citizens who have their students in public schools want and need. So we'll work on it, but it is a real issue for us to deal with. So, and thank you for doing that, Gabe. Please.
When does the presentations to the 8th graders usually begin for like high school and Essex Tech?
Each school have presentations in early November.
So we're right there.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Is there an opportunity for the high school to also present to 8th graders at roughly this?
Yeah, we present to the 8th graders as well.
Okay.
I would just add, since this seems to be a topic we're focusing on, that in addition to, differentiation, and I think making sure we're highlighting the things at Danvers High School, I think it's also incumbent upon residents of Danvers to ask questions about Essex Tech, their admissions process, the outcomes of Danvers students at Essex Tech. I think that's information that we don't have a lot of answers to, and I think that that's an important endeavor for any resident of Danvers to ask questions about it. It is your tax dollars, and I think those are legitimate questions that can be pursued and that deserve to be discussed as well. But in terms of Danvers High School, we're continuing to adjust our process for having 8th graders learn about the school. We have a new program that we're going to be putting into place for this year's 8th graders that I'm very excited about. It's going to be quite dynamic. And we consider to add different facets to making sure that all residents of Danvers know what's happening at Danvers High School. So it really goes beyond 8th grade. It goes to the elementary schools, and I think we're working hard to build those partnerships and share information as well. So we're committed to that and believe in sharing the good things that are happening here.
Mr. Federico, do you know when they have to apply by?
That whole process plays out November through December into early January.
So we really then probably should be asking Mr. Landers to come either in November or December to the school committee meeting, because maybe he can find out some of those questions that we have too and share. I don't know. I know he had wanted to come and present information too.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we talked about.
Yeah, so that might be the time to do that. Thinking.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Keith. Policy. Anything to report on policy? I don't think we've had a meeting.
Yeah, we haven't had
We
a
haven't
meeting.
meeting yet.
Okay. Deep, Mary Beth, I think other than the wine tasting, which is this the first live wine tasting since?
2019.
Love it.
Yep. We tried to come back a few times. It just didn't work. Deep, the monthly meeting is this Wednesday, 8 a.m. at Brookline Bank. We're looking forward to having new people come and join us, trying to build our group so we can continue to do what we do for the Danvers Public Schools. But it is only through volunteerism that we can gather that support. We do have our sponsors, but in order for our committee to grow and keep going, we do need new members to step up and help us out. So for the community, anyone can go. You don't have to have children in the Danvers Public Schools, but anyone that wants to support the Danvers Public Schools, we gladly welcome. And again, the wine tasting next Thursday. Halloween theme, wear a costume if you'd like. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Danvers Cares.
We had our first meeting in October, and it was a great meeting, very well attended. We looked at data around student mental health, bullying prevention, and substance abuse prevention. So they were data that came out of the Mass Youth health survey that was given at the high school level, as well as the vocal data, which comes out of the MCAS, which I presented some of that to you back in September. So we had a great meeting with a lot of community representatives, which really was exciting to see, because I feel like the shift that we're taking at Danvers Cares this year is we kind of were shifting towards supporting like school-based work and things like that, where I feel like the community support is what is the power of Danvers Cares, and getting the communities to support the work that we're trying to do in areas that we do need help with around student mental health, substance abuse prevention, and then the bullying and hazing. So we're doing that. We're also looking forward to planning with them some community conversations. So there's going to be a lot of, in addition to what Julie Pasternak is doing around her community learning at the elementary level, there's actually one we're going to pair together on with the Danvers Cares around sense of belonging. But we'll also do some other community conversations around substance abuse prevention, around bullying and hazing. So kind of building off the model that we started with the Danvers Police Department, which we were, very thankful that we were able to do that night in September with them, and partner with community organizations to kind of present to anyone in our school community that would like to, any adult that would like to come out and find out more about that areas in the work we're doing.
Okay.
So I'm really excited about the prospects of the year with Danvers Cares.
Anything you can share with the committee by way of reports on the surveys, anything that will help us understand what's happening would be great. So
Excited that next month we're going to add the student representatives into the mix. So they're looking at some of the same data that we looked at as adults. So it's going to be interesting to hear their perspective on analyzing the data, and then we can probably share that with you in November meeting.
great, thank you. Any questions? No questions. All right, CPAC.
We got the update last month from Miss O'Neill, and then I forgot the date, I have to check, but there's a Zoom workshop in December. And did they already have the workshop in October? The fair?
I don't think they did.
It didn't happen yet.
And did not give me the update on that. But
Okay, yeah.
I'll text her. I'll have an update by the end of the
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Human rights and inclusion. We have a meeting this Thursday. At the last month's meeting, as you can imagine, much of the discussion surrounded the response to those persons who were hanging over or hanging very hateful messages over the bridge by Route 1. And there was a tremendous community response to that. And but much of the discussion was, how do we respond to that, and how should we respond as a community? And the consensus is, never stay silent, always talk about it, and approach it head on in a positive way. So that was really what. The one thing I will say, Adam, we did not have student representatives at the last meeting. Anything you can do to just remind. That'd be great.
We have 4 student representatives that'll be at the next meetings and all the meetings moving forward. And they met with Ms. Ramon this week. So
Super. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, budget report.
Right before that, though, we skipped over the curriculum and assessment and curriculum and equity subcommittee, and we're meeting on Friday at 8:30. We're going to go over the district goals and more details by each level of how the goals are planning out.
Great. Thank you.
Right,
I
and so-
missed that. Oh, because it's not there.
So for the budget, we have Pam Crum, our finance manager, here today to present our budget
welcome.
reports. Yes.
This is your first live appearance before the town.
It is my first live appearance. Very exciting. Thank you for having me. So I'm just here to share with you that the business office side of central office has been busy. We did close out the FY22 books with the close collaboration with the town finance department, and that went well. So I have presented for you the FY22 final report that kind of shows where we ended, which was 0, sort of what we wanted. I mean, I guess the report shows a $600,000 deficit, but that was known, and the town provided an additional allocation for special education tuitions last year. So the actual effect is that we finished where we were supposed to. And as far as the beginning of FY23, you have your first monthly report for the month of September. And hiring over the summer and the way the salaries all kind of worked out, seems that we've done it. Mary and her team have done a really good job. So in that department, we are doing quite well. As with many things in our lives, things are more expensive than we sometimes think they're going to be. So there are places where we are seeing small overages, but right now they are manageable in many, many areas of our budget. Mary and I are working together closely, and we'll continue to have conversations with our contacts at Town Hall about the anticipated fiscal challenges associated with our special education tuitions in particular this year and into FY24, and figure out exactly what is going to be required to cover those costs. They are significant.
Sure.
And we don't yet have a full picture of what that is going to require, but we have some flexibility within our accounts, I guess, to absorb some of those increases. We have ESSER funding, which was the federal COVID relief grant that is quite significant in its magnitude and in its broad and its the ways in which we can spend it. And so we could use that to help cover some of the gap that we are seeing. We're waiting to hear from the state, because this is not a uniquely Danvers problem. This is something that many school business officials are quite alarmed about. They've announced an inflationary rate for the tuitions for FY24, which is 5 times what it usually is.
14%, where the year before was like a 2.5% increase. So to jump from 2.5 or around that, it amount to a 14% increase.
Wow.
Is significant. So
I will be attending a conference, a sort of professional development conference for Massachusetts school business officials on Thursday and Friday this week, where the focus is on special education expenditures and budgets. And we're kind of waiting to hear from DESE about any response they might be able to offer in supporting districts in handling these budgetary challenges.
Any questions? I would simply say, we know you jumped into this role, somewhat unexpectedly and with both feet, and had to jump in that way. And I'm sure it's a learning experience on the job, but do know that, Town Hall has committed to support you, and I know that they are. And just keep us posted. That's all we like to know. We like to know what's going on, and perhaps we can then, be part of the solution too. So, but Pam, we appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Personnel.
right before I do that, I want to do a report. I got a text back from Lynn.
Oh, okay.
So they're shooting for November 16th. They had a planning meeting today, this afternoon. And it will be around the topic of meet your special ed team. And so they're looking into the availability of the different special educators to be available for that. It will be a virtual meeting. And they're looking mid-November, perhaps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So November 16-ish. So.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So.
All right, and then personnel, you link to your agenda, you'll see the personnel memo for September and October.
All right. So with that completes our agenda. And when is our next, let's see, our next meeting would be the special meeting a week from tonight.
And then I believe the regular one.
I think the 14th of November?
Yes.
All right. And the
Yes.
November meeting is the 18th?
November 14th.
14th. Okay. All right. And that's it, unless anything else to offer.
Oh, and at the November 14th meeting is when we will share the representatives for the
We
screening committee.
we might have a meeting before then, virtually, to take a vote. We'll see how that.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, everyone would know by then.
Oh, yes.
So that they can commit to the
They'll be
dates.
sworn in
Yes.
to be here, yes.
No, the screening committee, superintendent
I'm
screening
sorry.
committee. Yes, we will announce the November 16th
My apologies.
date. So, yes.
We have so many
Unless
committees.
we don't have to meet before then, but yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
You got it. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank the committee and the administration, and good night.